Back. Should we get started?
Yeah, I think so.
So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. And huge thanks to Melinda, Ian, and Mark for agreeing to share all of their or a lot of their accumulated double-handed sailing knowledge. All three of our panelists have won double-handed divisions and have actually won Pac Cup overall at one race or another. So it's a real wealth of experience and knowledge on how to sail fast and have some good races. So Melinda, Mark, Ian, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Melinda, should we start with you?
Yeah, I'm Melinda Erklins. I've been sailing in the Bay Area most of all my life, and I've raced Pac Cup, I think 8 times and 2 Transpacs. And 4 of the times were double-handed with my husband Bill. In 1994, we did it on Moonshine and won overall, which was really fun and amazing. And then 20 years later, we decided to come back and try again double-handed, and we sailed on Wolfpack the last 3 times. And this time we're going on Onboard 24 because that seemed like a really good idea at the time we made the decision.
It's a really good idea.
It's a good idea, right? It'll be fine.
Once.
Right? That's what I'm thinking. Once is always good. So that's, I think that's it for me, unless anybody, I could talk for a while, but it would be boring.
My name's Ian Rogers. I grew up sailing here in the Bay Area. I did my first Pac Cup on Spirit, which is a Sparkman Stevens 33 in the year 2000. We got becalmed off the coast of California and spent a couple days drifting to Hawaii and vowed to do it again in 2002 and did much better. Won our division that time around. And then I've done 2 Transpacs and the 2016 Pac Cup with Mark.
Which they won overall.
That's correct. And then we got second overall in the 19 Transpac on the Velvet Hammer. We had a good run.
My name is Mark English, and like Ian, I grew up in a sailing family here in the Bay Area, and also like Ian, I grew up in a family that whose boat was a wooden boat. So I grew up doing not only a lot of sailing, but also a lot of sanding and varnishing and other boat work. Our family boat was a Kettenberg 38 named Chorus, and my first several offshore races were on that boat, including the 1996 Pacific Cup, where we were second in our division, 5th overall. I did Transpac in 2005 and 2007, both crewed on a Cal 40, then named Farfar. And then the 2016 Pacific Cup with Ian, obviously on Moss, where we won overall. And I'd say most of my experience in ocean racing has been crewed. The double-handed stuff all took place over 2 or 3 years with Ian on Moss, getting ready to go into 2016 Pac Cup. And I'm doing the 2022 Pac Cup on the Schumacher 46 Surprise.
I didn't know that. Cool. I just sailed last year. I did Transpac on a crude boat, and I'd done like the last 3 Pac Cups double-handed, and it was a big adjustment.
Did you feel bored?
No, but I felt like I drove a lot more than I needed to because I'm not used to having a trimmer.
Yeah.
I was just like driving, keeping the kite full, and they're like, we're here for a reason. I was like, oh yeah, sorry.
What were some of the other significant differences that you found?
Well, I really found that I like being down below all by myself because you can just do whatever you want and your stuff isn't anybody's way, and you don't have to, like with a crew of 9, it was, there was a lot of like, is that yours or is that mine? And I put my name on it, and it's just much simpler with 2 in a way. I mean, it's obviously a lot more challenging physically, but it's a lot simpler.
Your stuff's where you left it too. Like you took your boots off and you like put them next to the ladder with your life jacket.
Yeah.
And you wake up crewed, you're like, where the hell's my life jacket? Like someone moved it somewhere else. Yeah.
Exactly. And just the trimming thing was a big deal. because there's a little bit of sort of set it and forget it when you're double handing, because there's not a lot you can do. Like sometimes we've set up across sheets that you can trim a bit, but you can't like trim all the time.
Did you have an auto inclination to go try to banjo your spinnaker sheet when you started surfing on the Santa Cruz 50?
No, it was too big for that. It was clearly too big for that. But yeah, it was interesting. It was good.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. But everybody made fun of me when I said I was going to do it on More 24 the next year. So
Well, that's great. So I'm gonna once again encourage everybody to post any particular questions they have in the chat window. While just pop them in there while these guys give their presentation.
yeah, so we have a PowerPoint that is sort of a combination of different slides, so it's not like perfectly matchy all through. And some of it is from an older PowerPoint that Bill and I did in 2016. Some of it is from Mark and Ian's trip, and then we just thought we would talk through it. So I will share my screen and go to that. So there we both are. Moss is on top, looking very small with no hull showing. That's a great shot. I love that shot. And Wolfpack down below, which I must say feels really like it was super spacious now. Mark and Ian and I were talking about, you can see in Wolfpack, Bill's foot is on the Barney post or in the middle, and there's no way you could put your leg on the other side. On the More 24, we did our 150 miler, and I was steering with one foot on the lower cockpit wall and one foot on the Barney post, and I was like, and I'm sitting on the high side. How is this even possible? But it's very small.
That's the only photo, and that's probably the only time the number one was up for us.
Yeah.
That's just off Bonita. The wind's just softened for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
DCR3 is still like there post tack.
Yep.
For like 2 seconds before that one just like rides the rail to Hawaii.
And how long did you have that up?
2 hours tops.
So would you bring it next time?
It's a great follow-up question. I don't know. I would have looked at her a little harder and made sure it was the right call.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to move us on.
This 2016 was a big year. It was a heavier year.
It was quite windy, but not at the very beginning as much as middle and end.
Yeah.
But it was pretty windy.
It was probably actually perfectly windy, at least for us at the start. You know, we were kind of moving at hull speed the whole time.
That's good. And then maybe not being at windy at the beginning, a little less wet.
Yeah.
It's still wet, but a little less wet than if it was like a super rough, wet year right from the get-go.
I do remember that night, like that first night out, timing coming on deck
Mm-hmm.
when the waves would like break over the boat. Like you'd be down below, and you'd be like, the wave broke over the boat, and you'd open the hatch and like jump up and close it as quick as you could.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I'm going to just make a small announcement that I have a really old dog, and he just got up. And so if you hear barking, that's what that is. I'm going to try and ignore him though. So this is kind of what we have in our PowerPoint, but we can talk about anything. But these are the topics that we have sort of going forward here. So we talked a lot. We talked the other night, the three of us, and we talked about stowing and organization, and these guys did a really good job of getting super light. So do you want to talk about this picture of your bow? That's racing, right?
Yeah, so this is a picture of Moss underway in the Pacific Cup, and I think the point of this slide here, other than it looks slightly disorganized around the compression post, is that we had absolutely nothing forward of the bulkhead there to keep the bow up the entire race. There's this sense that I think when your boat's all loaded down and you're ready to go on the Pacific Cup, that you're using every nook and cranny. And for us, even on a More 24, we didn't need to put anything up front. I think actually we put our fresh eggs up front, maybe the apples, and that was it, as I recall. Everything was weight in the middle of the boat or weight in the back of the boat on the, on the high side or on the rail. So we were really, really conscientious about everything we took on the boat to keep our overall weight as light as possible. And we were also super conscientious about every hour where we were putting stuff based on the wind conditions and the point of sail.
And we were the same. I
Yeah.
feel like we were the same with Wolfpack. We had really nothing up front. And yeah, you just got to think about like what's your next few days going to look like when you start and position yourself accordingly.
We tried really hard, I guess, on this slide shows it, but like everything has two purposes on the boat. So you can see our required buckets. There's two of them there, the blue ones. And then you can see our fuel inside those buckets, right? Or those red MSR fuel canisters for our required fuel, and then spray foam in place. And so it's like how you get your fuel not to roll around down below, and keep everything kind of nice and tight and light. And you can see my silly hat up on the bow, the only thing that made it forward the bulkhead.
There, yeah. And did you say you sprayed foam in there?
Yeah, I spray foam those in there. So just wrap those MSR canisters in cling wrap.
Yeah.
And then just spray the inside of the bucket with WD-40, put them all in there and spray foam in place. And that whole thing just pops out with all the fuel canisters in place, but it keeps them all from rattling around.
Yeah.
It's just kind of annoying down below if they're just, moving all night while you're trying to sleep. Because
Yep.
part of this is how do I store the boat so it's really quiet, although it sounds like you're on like a mod 70 in the Southern Ocean on a More 24 down below.
I was going to say never really quiet.
But
Yeah.
how do you not hear clanging and stuff that like worries you while you sleep, right?
Yeah.
If you start hearing metallic noises while you're sleeping, you're gonna wake up.
Yeah. So I just have to say that we use our buckets. That's all I'm going to say.
That's fair.
Before everybody else showed up, there was an extensive conversation about bucket use and non-bucket use.
Whether you need to use the bucket or whether you can just go out the back. And we determined that I use the bucket and Ian never does. And I don't know about Mark because he was off the call. But he doesn't have to respond if he doesn't.
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you use a bucket? Apparently
No.
not, because there's no bucket available.
No
unless-
comment. No, we one of the reasons we went with the open transom, which was a modification we made for Pacific Cup, was so that we wouldn't have to use a bucket.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
that stems from our 2007 trip. I remember this because I'd been going off the back of the Cal 40, and Mark comes up on like day 5 and goes like, "Who knows how to fix a head?" And I was like, "Don't, never use one." Best of luck to you. In the tropics, Mark takes a whole head apart and fixes a baby wipe stuck in it. So, yeah.
It is super nice not having a head.
Yeah.
There's none of that smell. So just back to this thing, the easy access, like if you have things you're going to use all the time, then obviously you want to put them where you can reach them all the time and it's easy. And the stuff that is going to be, you would need in an emergency, you got to put somewhere. Where did you guys have your life raft? Right under the cockpit hatch?
Yep. Right under the
Directly under the cockpit floor. You just
Yeah.
the engine was behind it, you just grab it and rip it out.
Did you have to step on it to get down, or was it?
We put it like flush with the back of the cockpit or the front of the cockpit.
Okay. Oh, right.
It's like right under the cockpit. You just reach down, grab it, and pull it out.
Nice. And then, like, if it's stuff that you really, hopefully, are never going to need, but you're not going to necessarily need in 2 seconds, you can put that somewhere, stash it a little bit more. So, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, everything should have at least 2 purposes. You kind of talked about that with the buckets, but what's the deal with the bunk picture?
Yeah, we found out that on a More 24, the stock bunk is actually not, the tube is like, I don't know, it's like 7 feet long, and the J is like 8'6". And so there's an opportunity to get a spare pole, and it's the same diameter as the tube that is in the port bunk. and slide that spare pole into the bunk tube and have it hang out the back bulkhead in the boat. So we only went with one functioning carbon pole, but we'd taken our aluminum pole apart and slid it into the port bunk. And the thought being
Instead of the existing one.
exactly instead of the existing short one, because we didn't want to sail with like if we rounded down and broke our pole, we wanted to be able to fly a J length pole for the rest of the race instead of a pole that was potentially shorter.
Yeah.
So we were just like, everything we could do on the boat was about optimizing to make things do two things. So like that port bunk tube was now a spare pole and a bunk.
Nice. That's a great idea. This is Wolfpack looking aft, and you can kind of see the same thing. We did not have very much in the boat, and this is obviously before we packed it all up and it was a work day, but just in general, you know, there's no floorboards, there's a lot of open space, and when we went, we didn't, I mean, once you load all the emergency gear, you do have kind of a lot of stuff, but you got to just bring as little as you can.
You just have one bunk on the port side?
No, we had 2 bunks.
Oh.
You just can't see the other side.
Okay.
And then another thing we talked about is emptying the boat at the dock. These guys did sort of a more radical version of what I had proposed, which is always empty the boat before you go sailing, before you go out to sea, and then load every single thing back in, thinking about, do you need it? So they did it. You go ahead. Tell them. I'm like so impressed.
It was like the morning of the race. The boat had been in the water for like 3 days, and because we had to get our trailer to Oakland to launch, or get the trailer to Hawaii. And Mark's a St. Francis member, thankfully, and so we had the boat at St. Francis the night before. And we both got there. I don't know, Mark, we got there probably 8:30 in the morning. The race starts at noon, and you're just kind of walking around in circles. And so we pulled everything off the boat onto the dock into carts at St. Francis. We hoisted the boat at St. Francis and polished the hull before we put it back in that morning. And so it was a good exercise of getting everything off the boat, just emptying it all out and making sure like that we both agree everything should be on the boat. And in the end, we ended up having one extra tether that somehow snuck its way onto the boat, but that was the only extra piece of equipment on the boat that we didn't plan on having.
Nice. I was wondering if you'd found anything.
Yeah, we had a couple of friends and family who were there to see us off, who kept trying to give us like crackers and, you know, little goodies and stuff like that, and we kept just pushing them off and saying, you know, like, did you see what all the other stuff we pulled off here? That's not making it.
Yeah, that does not fit our theme.
Nope.
Yeah,
You can fly to Hawaii and give them to us when we hit the dock.
exactly, and we'd be very happy to see you.
But
Yeah.
I think Pack Up changed the rule after us because our shore crew like flew our dock lines and fenders out there. And I think now you have to actually bring your dock lines and fenders, because when we tied Moss up, I used my like life jacket as a fender and like a spinnaker sheet or something to tie the boat up with.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't because of you guys, but I think there were instances where the gear hadn't got there yet. Like if they shipped it over, especially, then suddenly there's a boat with no fenders or dock lines. So unfortunately, everybody has to bring them now.
Yeah. And I think just to reemphasize we're talking a lot about the details here. The bigger point that I think we're all really want to underscore is that the lighter your boat is, you know, whether you're trying to win or not, the lighter your boat is, the safer it is, the cleaner it is, the happier it is at every level. And there's nothing bad about having a light boat. And so I think, you know, in every single race I've gone in, there's been, you know, weight issues to the good or the bad. And it does make a big difference, even on small boats and small things.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Cooking. So we're like all in the left-hand category, which is you don't have a galley, you might have some baskets, or even on the more we don't have any baskets because they don't fit. So we have a cooler that we're going to use for our food. I don't know what you guys did. Did you have like little pouches on the side of the hull or anything, or you just had dry bags with food? Or
we had dry bags with food. We had freeze-dried food for breakfast and dinner, kind of snacked for lunch, and then we had the like tuna and chicken in the foil, in
Oh,
like in the foil things to kind of supplement
Yep.
with protein. And but we had no fresh fruit aside from 2 dozen eggs and a couple of apples.
What about nuts and snacks and snack bars and stuff? Did you bring any of that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, that was generally lunch.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, plus some beef and some turkey jerky.
And that
Yes.
would also be like lunch and also like your midnight snack, right? Because
Yeah.
you kind of have to eat 4 meals when you're not sleeping around the clock. You have to have a little energy at the middle of the night to get through it all.
Did you guys do you do those cup of soups in the cups?
Nope.
No.
My it's personal preference. Those things to me have a ton of sodium in them.
They do. There are less sodium ones. There's a Dr. McDougall that does a much healthier version, but they still have a lot of sodium.
Yeah.
In fact, they have so much sodium that when we went on moonshine, Bill ate like a case of them on the way over. He was like, "These are good and they're
Yeah,
easy."
right.
We had like horrible food. We did not have freeze dried because it was kind of crappy then, and we had these like military rations that heated themselves. It was
Oh,
like
nice.
thick. So we ate a lot of the soups. We got there and Bill said, "My hearing is like one ear. It's like a blown out speaker." And we were like, "You should go to the doctor." So we went to the doctor, and the guy said, "Have you been eating a lot of Chinese food?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Beer?" And he's like, "No." And he said, "What about those cup of noodles?" And he's like, "Well, I just ate a case of those." And the guy's like, "Yeah, it relaxed, the MSG relaxed your eardrum and it will come back, but you need to like eat a lot of vegetables and take vitamins and it will tighten back up again." But yeah.
I think this is something we did differently than you guys. Like we didn't eat together. Like so we just had individual serving food and like you would just kind of figure out how to eat in your off watch.
Really?
Yeah.
So like I would go below and
Not married.
cook my little food in the jet boil.
Yeah.
And we had a jet boil and we just poured the water into our freeze dried pouch and then you would seal it up and eat it 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later, whatever you're doing. But
Yep. Yeah, we were more elaborate, as you saw from the slides coming up. So we have this little cooler. It's not that big. It's like that, and we have bowls. Did you guys just eat out of the packets?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like one spork and
Yep. So we had 2 sporks, 2 bowls, and 2 mugs, and so we make enough for 2 people. Whoever we pretty much would just arrange when we ate around a watch changeover. So we would say, "Oh, let's eat at 6 o'clock," and then we would switch over to a watch system because we were terrible at watch systems. And that worked pretty well for us. But anyway, we would make it in this little freeze-dried thing. I did make a note. Ian, you were saying, do you wear foulies when you're using the hot water? What do you do? Did you say you did do that?
yeah, I do that actually on most of the boats. Like even on the 125, I actually find it's just there's not enough to hold on to down there. So if you wear foulies, you spill boiling water on yourself, it doesn't burn you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't like soak into your clothes and become a huge problem. So
Do you wear foulies even like at the point of the race where you're not wearing foulies? Like, do you
on the more you wear foulies until you're at the KYC bar, just to be like explicitly.
That's bad news.
Yeah, bad news.
Oh wait, hang on. You guys did it in 2016 and it was wet.
Yeah, but the deck's always wet on the moor, and I feel like the deck is fundamentally always wet on the 125. So I'd be wearing like foulie shorts too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's a question in the chat about fuel types for your jet boil or whatever heating system.
We had a jet boil on a gimbal, and it uses a propane canister you buy at REI. And what's amazing about the jet boil is it boils water in like a minute.
Yes, it is amazing.
It's so fast. You turn it on and you like do something else and it's boiling. So
yeah.
And the bucket photo that we saw earlier, were those jet boil fuel canisters?
No, that's gasoline pre-mixed with
Outboard
oil for the outboard, because you have to have 4 hours or 8 hours. 8 hours of fuel.
I feel like it might be 4 if you have an outboard, but I
It's
can't
forward and
remember.
outboard.
Melinda, did you guys also use a jet plane?
Yeah, we do same system, and it turns out we put it in the same. I mean, there's not that many places on the moor to really put it, but we put it on the same place. And
How much fuel did y'all end up using over the course of the race?
We took like a big fuel thing from REI, and we had like half of it left. I mean,
Yeah.
the backpackers are way into this, so if you want to get really geeky with it, like the backpackers have it dialed in, and you could figure out how long one of those burns
yeah,
and how many minutes it is, and then you just figure out how many cycles of hot water you need.
yeah,
Add a little margin to it and call it good. But we kind of did the math, and one large canister was going to make it to Hawaii and probably back. So
nice.
Right.
there's a company in the UK that sells those gimbals. They're like stainless steel gimbals, and they can ship them out to you pretty quick.
Oh, this is fancy. Measuring cup. Did you guys use a measuring cup? Or you just
We put a
really?
line inside the jet boil on how much water we needed.
Okay, perfect.
We just scored it in there.
It is kind of important to use, like, if you use too much water, it gets kind of mushy, and if you don't use enough water, it's not that good for you. You'll dehydrate yourself. I'm gonna
Those-
say. I
Those
don't
are
know if that's
those are
true,
good
but I think
tips.
it's not good.
Mushy is
Um,
better than dehydrated yourself. So,
Yeah. And that's, yeah. And then just, it sounds like you guys use the little single servings. The double ones are either 2 or 3 servings, so, or 2.5 or 3 servings, so they are plenty. We usually can't eat it.
I've usually found that I eat more in the first half of the race than the second half of the race.
Huh.
I don't know if it's the heat or your body getting used to it, but those I was slurping down an entire 2 servings of that stuff at the outset and was not even doing half of it by the end.
Yeah.
it also
I-
felt like you could have those like more heavy pasta based ones in the front half,
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, the beef stroganoff, but by the end you can't sell that stuff. You couldn't pay someone to take that off of your hands.
Yeah. And also at the very beginning, we always pick like chicken and rice or whatever sounds like the plainest thing for the first couple days. And I honestly don't eat very much for the first 36 hours because I get sick. We put these in and they're great. These veggies, they're really good. You put them in, they make the freeze dried really nice. We always put a little bit of olive oil in because it kind of keeps everything going for the people. And we also bring Tabasco sauce because but we just bring like one of those little guys.
Just to make Melinda kind of did a very nice job of gently saying it, but you do need to really focus on getting some fiber in you and staying hydrated. There's been some pretty well-known stories of people arriving on double-handed boats that didn't have enough fiber in their diet, and it's not fun.
No, it's not a good place to be.
No.
And there's a magnesium called Calm, or a pill called Calm, and they make a gummy, and they make it like you said, Mark, that you had
Powder.
powder. Yeah, and that's actually really good for that.
Yep.
Keeping you regular and also help with sleep.
It helps you fall asleep, but it's not a sleep. It's not gonna make you dopey when you wake up.
Yeah. So we're definitely bringing that. We always have packed by the day and figured out what we're going to eat each day and marked it. This is day 1 and made all the decisions. Basically, we tried to make as many decisions ahead of time as we could because you're kind of tired and it's so easy if it just says this is what you're cooking today. And you don't have to dig through and have a conversation. Of course, you guys didn't have to have a conversation because you were just making yours. Your conversation was, don't eat my stroganoff.
Well, the conversation was about day 8 because Ian was going paleo, so he found these freeze dried paleo meals.
Uh-huh.
And I was so sick and tired and over salted on mine that I started kind of peeking over and looking at his as he was making his and sort of offering up trades and things like that.
Did he go for it?
No.
No.
Yeah.
On
Well,
a couple of them, but mine were like vegetable based. They didn't have a bunch of rice and pasta in them. At the end of the race, like, it felt like the right food. And we negotiated a little bit. We traded some stuff.
there were some Mai Tais exchange for his meals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Pre-exchanged,
And maybe
I-
maybe some babysitting too.
right?
And I've taken this like bagging your food. Like I do this on all the boats I go on. It's just
Same.
you have to, like, so in the double-handed thing, you might be bagged 3 days worth of food. Like I had bags day 1 through 3, but when you go on a crude boat, you still do it, and it's just day 1, day 2, and it just keeps going because
Yeah.
it keeps you rationed, and it's really easy to go back and look at how much food we have, and if we have too much or too little, if we need to change anything, it makes it it's just a really good way to get it all solved out. I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise, I think in 2002 we ate all the Pringles within 36 hours of leaving San Francisco, and it's nice to have a little more pace on that. So
Yeah. Also, if it turns into a slow year, you have a good sense of how much more food you have, and you can slow down your eating if you need to slow it down.
or if it's a fast year, you can decide to get rid of some food.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, caffeine. Caffeine is hard because if you drink too much coffee, you don't go back to sleep. And double-handed, you might be going back to sleep in like 2 or 3 hours. So that's a tricky line to sort of, you got to walk the line of what are you going to do. We kind of, I guess we make like a Via coffee, and then I don't drink it all. I drink just like a little bit, and then I dump it. And I end up drinking lot less coffee at sea than at home because of the sleeping thing.
Yeah, same for me. And I would say a couple of tips that were specific to double handing, because I think everybody I talked to before the race said that they had all fallen asleep at the helm at one point or another. And it's a really big point of focus, I think. So I tried, in terms of coming on watch, I tried these things called cacao bites. And the number one mistake I made, aside from using them, was that I didn't try them before the race. They were kind of a last minute afterthought. And I didn't realize that they were going to keep me up for 4 to 6 hours. So I got all jacked up the first time I used them. They did great. And then I couldn't go to sleep off watch. And just about the time they were starting to wear off, it was time for my next watch.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me about 36
like a good drug addict, he doubled that.
Yes, eventually you got to pay the price. And it took me about 36 hours to wash that, sort of off schedule out of my system, and it was brutal in the middle of the race. It was really tough. So avoid the cacao bites and don't take anything that you haven't tried before. So then the question is, what does work? I drank a lot of water, kind of like every 5 minutes or so, I was taking a sip of water. And just the motion of doing that and having something to do and to focus on, I found really helped me stay awake. I don't know about Ian, but I never fell asleep on the helm. Even as tired as I was, I never did. And that was a big part of it. I also would pinch the back of my legs pretty often to try to stay awake. So you just got to do all of these, keep your eyes moving all the time, find little things to fiddle with, and just kind of keep active.
And I haven't had caffeine in 8 years. I gave it up when I had my first child, and so I don't drink any of this stuff, and this is a slide not for me. But when Mark went into his 36-hour cacao bean hiatus, it was a mess. I mean, we were in 3-hour watches, and we had to drop to 2-hour watches for a bit to try and get things back normal again. So try it before you get out there. Don't think like I'm going to eat chocolate covered espresso beans from Trader Joe's without having had them before.
Yeah, and I think also before the race, try not to. I remember that I think it was really the first time. I don't think I done it since then. We had a really busy week right before we were going, and I was like going to Starbucks and getting double, somethings, and then having another coffee later in the morning, and I was like super caffeinated for 4 or 5 days, and then I got on the boat and I didn't drink any, and I got a horrible headache, and I felt like crap. and I didn't get good sleep. So now I like try and actually wean myself off coffee before we're going to go out to sea, and I'll drink a little bit, but I really like taper it down so that it's not one more thing to adjust.
It makes it so much easier if you don't have any caffeine in your system to snap awake and go to sleep. Like the on-off switch is easier to access.
And we were talking the other night, and I listened to music and books on my iPod, which these guys both raise their eyebrows at, but it works for me. If it's really
Do you guys not listen to audio?
no, they both
The headphones didn't serve two purposes, so they didn't get to go.
right? Yeah. I brought less
What about-
coffee, but I bring a little iPod and just like buds. And if it's really windy and gnarly, then I put them away.
What about earplugs? Do any of you wear earplugs?
You need to be able to wake the other person up off watch. So like you need to be able to pound on the deck as hard as you can. You need them to wake up.
Yeah. In
Earplugs.
fact,
Like,
sometimes you can pound on the deck as hard as you can, and they won't wake up.
Melinda, Bill has a special wake up system, right?
Right. He needs a string tied around him because he did like one time it was like 2 a.m. and I couldn't wake him up, and I was banging and pounding and yelling, and I could have just crashed the boat and he would have woken right up. But and then I started thinking, I think he must have gotten up to go pee behind me, and he's went overboard. And so then I'm like looking at the compass course, like I'm gonna have to like go back, and I'm just in full panic. It's the middle of the night, and finally, then I pounded some more, and he finally came up, and I was like, I am so mad at you. I'm so mad at you. I've been trying to wake you up for 20 minutes, and I thought you were back there. And he's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, yeah. So that wasn't good. It was memorable.
There's a question about the magnesium supplements that you guys mentioned. I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's
I'm afraid to go away from the thing, but
oh yeah,
It
okay.
looks like someone jumped in and answered it, and I think I'll double check after we're done. But it looked like they got the right answer there.
yeah, Calm is the one that I know of, and it comes in like these sort of tall tubs, or it probably comes in smaller, but the one I have is. We talked about all this, and then you guys did eggs, which you said was really good, and I'm going to talk to Bill about whether I can talk
So
him into that.
if you can get, and it's really has to be very specific, it has to be farm fresh, unwashed eggs. Like you have to get them straight from the chicken. So you need to know a guy got a chicken. Mark, you have chickens, right?
Yeah. So the only problem with that was that I had our 24 eggs set out the morning of the race, all ready to go, and my mother-in-law came along and washed them, trying to be helpful. Which washes the whatever the coating is, it washes it off. So we had to go scramble and go find another option, which we did. But they can't be pasteurized and they can't be washed.
And they don't need to be refrigerated.
And then they don't need to be refrigerated. They have to be flipped every 24 hours, top to bottom, which we thought the bow of the Moore 24 did nicely.
Yeah.
And did any break?
Nope.
Yeah.
And you just boil them in the jet boil?
And then you boiled them, and then did you just boil them for a couple of minutes and let them sit in the hot water, or did you? Yeah.
Yeah, we'd fire up the jet boil, get to a boil, turn it off, and let it sit for 10 minutes, pull them out, and then we either drink that water or use it to cook with. Because we don't have a water maker, so you got to conserve water.
Yeah.
They were really great. They were like a big pick me up. Like I remember being really excited. Like it'd be like a 10 in the morning snack, and like having a fresh egg was like a fresh hard boiled egg was like, oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah, that is good, especially warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. These are just basic things you do on any boat. Remove all the cardboard packaging because you don't want to carry it. If you're going to cook, if you're on a bigger boat and you actually have like a proper galley, then just try and think of everything you need and nothing you don't need. No extra. You don't need 2 pans necessarily, all that.
That little excerpt there about keep the instructions, like super important. So when you're repacking any food, I keep scissors near me and I'm always like cutting off instructions and throwing them into the new package.
Yeah.
Because you will forget how much water one of them takes. And,
Yep.
and you either end up with soup or not enough water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And you just stick it in with the Ziploc or whatever you're putting the stuff in.
And you can reuse those Ziplocs as trash bags. So we would take like a daily Ziploc and then like compact all our trash into it, seal it up, and
Yep.
throw it in the back of the boat.
Yeah. We bring Noom tablets, or we did. This time we're gonna bring something from the Hammer line. That's like an electrolyte that you put in with your water. I don't know if you guys did that, but it made a difference for us. On the really hot, when it's super hot and you're just melting, you can definitely tell the difference between just drinking the water.
I don't think I used any tablets or any other electrolytes. I don't know if Ian, did you? I can't
No,
remember.
I mean, it probably would have been nice.
Yeah.
I think that later in the race, you get pretty bored of the water, but
Yeah. And also, I mean, I find I start getting headache and stuff if I'm
Yeah.
dehydrated, and even just drinking water. Although maybe it's the soups. If we just eat the soups that are really sodium, then we don't need them. Yeah, anyway. Next one is boat bum is really terrible. If you're sitting with a wet bottom on the side, it gets pretty raw and horrible. A lot of people use baby powder to just kind of dry everything up. Definitely something like a diaper rash cream, if somebody got it bad, is going to help. And my personal favorite is hand sanitizer, because it like dries everything. So if you're salty and wet and you just like wipe off with water, like a paper towel and water, and then use hand sanitizer, it dries quickly. And if you're starting to get a rash, it dries it up. It's amazing.
Adding to that, diaper rash cream is like 75% zinc oxide. So it also makes great sunscreen.
Which is your 2-4 rule.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we stole this from you guys. You told us about sitting on those deck mats.
Yeah.
And we sat on deck mats. And so like it's just like a 1x1 square, and you figure out how to lash it wherever you sit. And having like a 1/4 inch of air underneath your foul weather gear keeps your foulies dry.
Yeah.
So you're not just sitting
Or
in water.
drier.
Yeah.
Drier. When they sit in water, like when they're wedged against the deck, they don't breathe, and your bum just gets smoked.
And your fleece also, in the first couple of days, you lose all the insulating properties from your fleece when it's all smashed flat. So I think it helps with the warmth too.
Yeah. Did you guys do anything alongside the hull down below where you're sleeping? No.
Pulled right into that thing and just
We've done a really thin deck, or a thin like yoga mat type thing, or where you're lying you're kind of at waterline.
Yeah.
it's cord that were there, right? It's balsa cord at that point, so it shouldn't be super cold.
That might be a boy-girl thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was cold. Seasickness, I get really sick for like 2 or 3 days, and then it goes away, and then it can get rough as guts later, and I'm totally fine. But the beginning has been bad before. And I have a thing called a relief band, and it's like a little, it's like the ones that do pressure points, but instead of that, you put a little gel here, and it's battery powered, and it like sort of shocks your wrist, and it makes a huge difference. Definitely brings the seasickness down to where I'm not throwing up. I found some ginger gum that I tried this last time, and it was great. I ate like 20 pieces in our 150 miles. And bonine or Dramamine, if you start that a couple of days early, then if you take those, you get tired and you feel a little buzzy. And if you take it early, your body kind of adjusts, and then by the time you get on the boat, it's not terrible. And then Calm is the thing we were talking about, the magnesium.
Just one other pitch on seasickness, because in the 1996 race, I was throwing up for 48 hours straight, and I was pretty queasy for another 12. I couldn't hold anything down until 60 hours into the race.
Yeah.
And the number one thing that I can do to avoid getting seasick is to cut out alcohol for the 7 days before you start.
That's a good.
It's just I've tried it. I've done a fair bit of sailing in the English Channel and kind of around those areas in some pretty rough weather. And without fail, if I follow that rule, I'm fine. And if I don't, I get sick.
So it seems like when there's only two people on the boat, one person being debilitated with seasickness takes on an additional dimension.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to just like tough it out.
Yeah. I'll also say too, Ian did something which is I've heard this advice before. I've never seen someone successfully do it, but they say that if you're sick, that you've got to eat. You've got to keep putting stuff in. And I think Ian was sick for the first time in his life in 2016, and he was eating immediately after he threw up, which I couldn't believe he pulled that off, but he did it. And I'm pretty sure that he wasn't sick for very long, and I think it was helpful.
Yeah, I've not gotten seasick. I don't get seasick, but in 16 we started the race, and I was down getting my first, maybe it was my first GFS or my first HRR file right around the Farallones, and I was, on the computer down below, and the nerves were up there, and I just like stuck my head out of the hatch and just got sick. And it's the only time I've ever gotten sick, but I turned right around and ate something, because the acidity builds in your stomach when you do that, and then it makes you want to get sick again and again and again. And it's hard to do, but
I usually bring saltines and just
Yeah.
keep eating those, and yeah, they're not very horrible to throw up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. You could sort of think about what you're eating, because you're gonna eat it, you're gonna taste it twice.
not too much Tabasco sauce.
No Tabasco sauce for me for the first 3 days. So this slide I put in just to that this is really late in the race. This might even, the picture of Bill might even be like the day before we got there in the windy year. And for us, the last morning of 16, it blew like 40. So you're not gonna, like you said, you'll never get out of your follies. We definitely got out of ours, but then we had to get back in. And that year we were in them much, much more than other times. In fact, on Wolfpack, we did it in 12 days in 14, and we did it in 9 days in 16. So it was just windy and wet. But anyway, just that was just kind of could be wet the whole way.
If you go back to that photo, that's a really good photo. It shows a bunch of things I think they're important to take away.
Okay.
It shows Bill's tongue out of his mouth, which is he's really focusing.
Right?
But it also shows really important sail stacking. You guys have a sail stack right in front of the helm position here, so that when the water's blowing down the deck, it's getting thrown over the rail or thrown into the cockpit and keeping you guys dry.
Yeah, and you could sit on that thing and get up off the deck if you wanted to. It was nice. Yeah. There was one incident where the sail stacking bag tried to leave the scene, but we did manage to avoid that. Bill called me up and he's like, "We have a big problem."
Melinda, you're gonna have a love-hate relationship with that lifeline on your back too.
Yeah.
That narrow cockpit and the moor, that thing just like grinds you right on the shoulder blades.
I know. So the sail stacking bag we had folded like this, and it was still pretty long, but you could fold it up and make it tall. And the one part just unfolded and went out the back. And there was like 5 feet of sails behind us, and the rest of the bag was all tied up, but it was really hard to get it back.
Is this a special type of bag, a special type of sail stacking bag, or just
It's a bag we had made so it's basically like a giant sail bag that you can zip open and stuff a lot of sails in. It's extra big, and it's hardy. It's a durable material.
We talked a little bit about like what's the struggle for the small boat is that your sails are so small. Your storm jib it's this big, right? I mean, it's not that big, and your kites, when they're vacuum bagged, they're this big. They're not that big, and you can't tie that stuff to the rail. So the Erklins and Mark and I have both used like different sail stacking bags. We used sail bag, like square bags for kites off like a 40-footer, and we put all our sails in there and then lashed all that together and then tied that to the rail, because the number 3 jib is just going to blow off the boat. It's going to be gone, and we need that later. So
that's kind of a good segue to, you should plan ahead what sail you might be using next, because if you do that, we did that. We had like this one night where it got super windy and our number 4 was in this bag and it should have been on the deck ready to go up.
It was the same night we needed our number 3, and I had put it behind the rudder post that afternoon.
And then you got it back out, but
We were tempting
With the
Murphy's
swearing.
Law with that one.
yeah. Yeah. And then this is you guys having a halfway party. But also wearing full faux weather gear.
Yep.
Are you
Yeah,
barefoot?
You can see our deck mat we're sitting on there, a little blue mat we're
Yeah.
sitting on.
Yep.
Also tempting Murphy right there because this was the start of probably the toughest 24-hour stretch we had in the race.
And you just had a little shot of whiskey.
We
Yeah.
shared that one shot because there's no room for a bunch of booze on a double-handed boat.
No, there's really no, I mean, that's probably the perfect amount.
Yeah,
You would actually feel that after 7 days of nothing and
absolutely.
You do, yeah. You split that shot. We poured the other shot over the side of the boat and ate those cookies that one of our shore crew like forced upon us, and we finally said yes to something, and they're pretty good.
Yeah.
and then you were on deck for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think this is in the morning. This is the morning, it's probably after the 8 o'clock check-in, and we're across the halfway point, and we spent maybe an hour together. Mark and I didn't spend a lot of time together, just the way our watches lined up. Like, it was just like you're on or off, and you're down below, and you're really sailing a lot by yourself. And this is one of those rare moments when you kind of celebrate the victory of being there.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question about the number of photos. You've all been barefoot.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hot, but you're really wet. But your feet
Yeah.
are really wet.
You're not worried about stubbing a toe or smashing a foot or.
A little more, not so much, but
Yeah.
I think we wore boots probably till day 5 for warmth, and then it's warm out and you're hot, but you can't take off your weather gear, so it's a nice way to kind of like cool your body.
Yeah.
In my last Transpac race, I got yelled at for being barefoot on deck a bunch. I don't know. It's your personal preference.
And also you're not walking around the way you are on a crude boat because
Yeah.
you're pretty much tied to the helm.
You're
I've-
locked
this-
in that station.
This is the only long ocean race that I've been on where I was barefoot most of the time. I'm always a shoe wearer, and this time it just exactly as you said, you're not walking around as much as you are
Yeah.
on other boats.
I think we might have put boots back on at night, but not during the day.
Yeah, I think I brought shoes and boots, and I think there'd definitely be time where I put my shoes on at night.
Yeah.
A little more traction, but I don't know. There's just times where you want a little difference in footwear. So
Yeah. We use this ocean sleepwear. Do you guys got one too, right? Yeah.
yeah, I have one. I love it.
It's
It's the best
amazing.
sleeping bag in the world.
Yeah. We call it like the magic sleeping bag. You get in, you're kind of damp, and you get out and you're all like ready to go and dry again. And it has several layers of fleece in it, and and after it gets a little bit warmer, you just peel one out and then you have like a fresh sleeping bag.
I hope you guys get like royalties to these things, because I bought it after Bill recommended it, and it's amazing. It's got a breakaway zipper. You can just like be in it and be like, I gotta get out of it, and the zipper just like snaps open and you're out. It's
I know. I love this thing. When we had in-person POAs, we would like bring our sleeping bag and be like, you should get one of these. It's the most amazing thing. Yeah.
I used it this last weekend on a camping trip with kids because it's just so comfortable. I use it all the time.
We talked about this. If someone's sick, it's start be conservative. I mean, I think that the point of this is really that you're just two people, and if you don't, especially if you don't have an auto helm, which we didn't, and I doubt if you did, if one person goes down, you're kind of screwed. So you got to be careful.
Yep.
As careful as you got to be prudent, which is sometimes crazy. It still might be crazy, but just try not to break yourself. Down below, there's like no running water. You just gotta, and again, you don't want anyone to get sick, so use the hand sanitizer. We usually just would wipe our dishes out and then we would clean them, like, we would clean them, but not every single time, probably every other time or something. We just like wipe out the leftover freeze-dried food and then, but if you're cooking in the jet boil, there's really nothing to wash except for what you're eating out of in your spork. So that's easy.
You know, that same hygiene issue, like bring some baby wipes. Those things are
Yeah. Oh yeah, baby wipes.
Yeah.
They
amazing.
make biodegradable ones now that are pretty good.
The Honest Company ones are biodegradable. They're available at Target. They're great.
And you'll go through them. And they're great like when you get off watch and you're all salty and it's rough and you can just like wipe your face and wipe your hands and then just go to sleep in your foul weather gear. But you do feel a little better, right?
You fell asleep in your foul weather gear.
Well, so we would, if it's really rough, we don't deploy the sleeping bag immediately. We just like strip down to like your knees. So pull your fallies down to your knees.
Yep.
Take your jacket off, pull your fallies down to your knees, and then maybe cover with the outside of the sleeping bag is pretty warm.
Like a blanket.
Yeah. And then when it's finally less wet, then we pull that out.
I'm a big fan of like, yeah, definitely trying to get out of your foul weather gear, right? That, you know, so if it's down to your knees or off, like,
Yeah.
you get so clammy in that stuff and just, you got to get it off your body.
Yeah. Down to your knees is pretty good, especially if you're dry underneath. It's, it's pretty good. If you're a seasick person, then you're trying to get into bed as fast as possible and horizontal as fast as possible. So that saved the dealing with the boots.
Yep.
So, burns, we talked about maybe cooking in your foul weather gear and just be really, I mean, that's like one of the most significant risks, I think, down below is getting burned. It's probably the only risk down below. Watch schedules and navigating. Do you guys want to talk about this?
We do this differently than you guys, right? You guys kind of have this like free market
right
watch system going on, and we have a
Yeah.
little more regimented thing.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about yours and then I'll
You'll counterpoint it
if
with like,
you're married, this is how you do it.
opposite.
Yeah.
So
If you're
I
married,
guess
you have to be flexible.
Right?
it stems from just like we were trying to build watches around the GFS and the NDFD, and those come out every 6 hours. So then 4-hour watches don't really make a lot of sense, and the 2-hour watches don't make a lot of sense. So a 3-hour watch starts to like make sense for weather, because you're trying not to wake up. You're trying not to disturb the off watch. So you're trying to align grabbing GFS or NDFD files during a transition of a watch. So Mark and I did 3-hour watches kind of religiously until the big cacao bean incident, where we stepped into 2-hour watches for a day to try and get rest and things back under control. But we also, like, I navigated and Mark wasn't navigating or doing that part of the business. So we needed like one person to be able to grab those files every 6 hours. So it was really important to us to be able to do that watch system and kind of align it with those schedules. And then one thing Mark and I really worked on really hard was talking about the next 3, 12, 18, 24 hours, like what we thought was happening, right? So it's like, and I still take this to bigger boats with crews, is like, hey, I think in the next 3 to 6 hours, we're going to change from the 0 to the, to the A3 or whatever that is, and get people thinking about that what if, what's happening, or where to jibe. Like, hey, we're talking about the wind's going to back and we're going to be sailing at 250 instead of 230. We need to jibe on that shift. So when you see that shift, pound on the deck and wake me up. We kind of talked about that role. I don't know, Mark, if you want any more color to that.
No, you said it. You hit the high points.
So that, and one thing that is interesting where you said just like pound on the deck and wake me up. I think double-handed, there's also sometimes where you say pound on the deck and wake me up, but if we're like 20 minutes or 30 minutes from a change anyway, maybe just let's do it at the change so everyone gets more sleep.
Yeah. There's a balance to that pound on the deck. I think that's fair. I think you got the shift in your 15 minutes, the next watch change. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be up already, right? We can hustle it up. I think
Yeah.
communicating clearly to your partner is also really critical. I mean, I remember like, hey, Mark, I really gotta go to the bathroom. And Mark's like, I'm not on deck till 7, bud. Like, best of luck. Figure it out.
That's funny.
And trying to figure it out while Mark was still down below. Like, I don't know, he's like blow drying his hair or something down there. I don't know.
In my defense, I didn't understand the urgency in his voice when he said that. And
I'm sure you had better words after that.
so, Melinda, as you know, in marriage, there's the difference between what is said and what is heard was different.
Right. So our watch, so we were definitely a different system than you guys. One thing is we both would download weather. So then that sort of created more flexibility, I guess. And we did try and do it at, try and get watch changes to match weather stuff so that someone didn't miss out. But kind of our biggest thing is how old are you guys? Or how old were you in 2016?
It's kind of a personal question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was 43.
43. Okay. Because it was interesting because when we went in 94 and we were 30, we like slept all our off watches, all of our, when we were off and didn't hang out together. And we're like very much more religious about being on watch. And then we came back 20 years later and we were like, we don't need as much sleep anymore. And we would do watches at night, and during the day we had a much more kind of flex time, who needs more sleep, and sometimes you'd get 4 or 5 hours if the other person was doing fine, and then you'd do another, like you'd have a long day, and then we would around dinner time be like, we got to get back onto a watch system before it's dark, and we start arguing over who gets to go to sleep. And
you get first watch off, right? I assume.
Sorry?
You get the first watch off. You get to go to sleep first.
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm sure like when the conversation's going down and you're like, oh, I need some sleep. And you're like, I'm going to take 3 hours. Thanks.
It's strategic, right? Because then you got to start thinking about who's going to be up at 3 a.m. and like, do you want to be that person or not? And we actually would, like have dinner. We had breakfast and dinner together, and sometimes lunch. And we would talk about, so what are we going to do? Is it going to be if it was going to be windy, then maybe we would do shorter, like hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes. But our hour and a half started when you were lying down. That was a family rule. So you could go down below, get ready, and then you'd be like, okay, and then your time would start. And that worked really well for us, but it meant that the clock, you couldn't really look at a clock, you just had to have a timer.
Do you guys have natural circadian sort of patterns, like morning person, night person, generally, that contributed to making it a good watch schedule?
Probably, maybe. I don't know which one of us would be the night person, though. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. No, I think it's just, I mean, honestly, we've been married for a long time, and I think it just, that works for us. I don't know that it would work for other people, because you have to be able to say, I think you screwed me and I need some more sleep.
Honestly, I think that you get so deep into sleep deprivation that I didn't notice any particular rhythm to it.
Yeah. I found we just did our 150 miler, and we were doing just like 2 on, 2 off. And I had my clock set for an hour and 45 minutes, and I was waking up before it went off every time. So I think for me, like a 90-minute thing is kind of a natural like power nap for me.
It's hard to have it like not. It's hard to have it not like on a defined time, right? Like have it like you're gonna jump in the bunk and the time's gonna start. Because there's times where you're down there like, I don't know, I'm like maybe I'm looking at charts or expedition, I'm making some food, and they're like, hey buddy, like you gotta go to bed, you know?
Right? We had those conversations. You gotta go to bed. But for us, like you'd be making the food for the other person too, right? And so it was a little less, I guess it was a little less independent, right? If you were doing something, it was either navigating, which is a worthy cause and you should stay up for, but not lose sleep as the person that's doing it. Anyway, navigators always
Yeah.
get kind of screwed in the sleep department. So
You really do. I mean, because I think like the 125, we run 4-hour watches, and then we had 5 people, and I would run a 3-hour watch inside of them, right? Just to grab weather more often. So
Yeah.
you really get the short end of the stick.
yeah. But anyway, I think really you just have to find what works. For us, that works. You know, setting your watch to a timer that counts down from 2 or 3 hours worked fine for us. But other people, it's easier to know what time of day it is and so on. There is like the mystery moment where you're like, I have no idea how much more time I have.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you guys, this is like I don't know, it's a small secret. I have like a Timex cheap watch, but it vibrates. And for some reason, beeping doesn't wake me up, but the vibrating watch
Oh, nice.
it rips me out of deep sleep. So it's like what I use double-handed to wake me up.
I didn't even know they had a vibrating. That's cool.
Yeah, it's the Timex Expedition, whatever, vibrating alarm. It's $25 on Amazon.
I'm writing that down.
Me too. I'm getting one.
All right.
Okay. So this is your out grabber, and this is you use this for control.
So it's a way to depower a symmetric kite.
Okay.
So I think the double-handed approach is how do I not wake the other guy up? And so this is Stan Honey's slide of this on a Cal 40, and this is probably more complicated than what is really on the More 24.
Mm-hmm.
But we used our reef line as an out grabber, right? So once you're deep running, you're not reefing, you can unrig your reef line and you can use this as an out grabber. And it goes out to the end of the boom, and you run it it goes through a jammer on the deck. And so what you're able to do is kind of burp the sheet out maybe 2 or 3 feet and rip on this out grabber, and it's just going to take the kite and it's going to flatten a little bit. And so now maybe instead of having to shift gears at like 22 or 24 knots, when you're going to swap from like an S2 to an S4, you can extend that range. You can take that range through the squall. And then when the squall passes and you need to power the boat back up, you can ease this out grabber off and pull the sheet back in, and you're back and running again. So just a way to like make a symmetric kite. Not all the boats carry symmetric kites. The more likes to deep run, it does pretty well in that situation. So symmetric kite works pretty well.
Yeah.
It's a way to like kind of throttle back a kite that is probably overpowered at the time. Instead of
So it's pulling the clue out towards the boom.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pulling the clue out towards the end of the boom, right? And it's just basically making that, it's taking the roundness out of the kite, it's making it a little bit
Yeah.
flatter,
Yeah.
and it makes it more stable. So if you're deep running and the kite wants to walk to weather, it's like stopping the mid seam from going past the forestay, which then stops you from rounding down.
Interesting. Cool.
That is cool. We didn't. We use snuffers, which is for a different purpose. But we've used socks or snuffers the last with Wolfpack. We didn't use it with the little boat, I don't think. And it's pretty great. We run it to a winch on the deck that you can reach from where you're driving, and then if you tip over or things get completely crazy, you just blow the sheet and then you grind that on and the kite just goes away. And then usually the other person does get up when that happens, and you kind of get straight again, and they're like, are you ready? And you're like, yes, I'm ready. And then they let it go, and but it keeps it from getting tangled, and it's really it's tricky to set up, but then it's easy to use, which is nice. And we used them in the gorge on the Wabbit when it was blowing in the 30s, and it was awesome. Amazing.
Is that the same as like a belly line, like a spinnaker retrieval line?
No, it's like a long sock.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It goes up and it sits and it compacts and it sits at the top, and then you can pull it down and it just controls the kite. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
You don't mind the weight aloft and the
That is a thing that you have to live with, but you just find I mean, for us, it's been, we don't put it on all the kites. We just put it on the heavy weather stuff. So, because you're not going to need it most of the time, but you do need it when it's, when it's blowing, well, it's nice to have when it's blowing over 25.
And it makes such a controlled like set of a kite, right? Because pole goes out, guy goes out, kite's up, and it's not full. And now we pull the snuffer up, and now we're sailing. And then we want to jibe, we snuff the kite, jibe the boat, pull the snuffer up. Like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a double-handed
And you can, like, regain control.
Yeah, and your moment of truth when you release the snuffer can be on a good surfing wave, so it's not all loaded up. You can put yourself in that position.
Roger asks if there's a particular brand of snuff you prefer.
No, we usually go to Blue Pelican and look for them used and fit them to fit our. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know exactly where you would go and get one. Do you guys know? I'm pretty sure we just like find them. Find them.
They're kind of just out there. You just kind
They're
of
out there,
used, right?
But they are great. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I can check in with Bill, who's our procurer of snuffers, and who's not here right now, and try and answer that.
Somebody responded that APN makes them.
Oh, good, perfect.
Okay.
I just had this like flashback. I don't know. I guess it was because of the snuffer and the wild sailing, but also in 16, it was so wet one night that this huge wave came, filled the cockpit, and our Dan boy went off inside the wall. It was sitting in the cockpit with me, and it went off, and the little arm went up, and then it fell down below. Like perfectly lined up, and the light fell right into the down below and started blinking. And Bill was like, it was like a disco, and it's super dark, and suddenly like this thing which is kind of fluorescent, and then down below which is blinking, and Bill came up and he's like, what's going on? And I was like, we're gonna crash. And like 10 seconds later we crashed, because it was that moment where you can't see anything because it's been pitch black, and then suddenly bright light, strobe light in your face. Anyway.
Yeah,
and I think here, just again to underscore this, that it's not only talking about what's coming in advance and planning for that, especially at night, and not getting caught out with a sail that you can't get to or without a plan. And then also there's micro things that you can do to extend your range on these sails, and all we talked about minimizing your risk. Every time someone has to go up forward of the mast, that's a big risk. Changing sails is slow and bad things can happen. Setting a new kite when it's blowing 30 is sketchy. So thinking about all of the stuff in advance, it really just it's all about putting yourself in a good position and not putting yourself in bad positions.
very good.
I'm guessing Melinda would also, you are going to wipe out. So having, knowing what to do when you wipe out is always a good plan too. It sucks to have to go practice those things, but knowing how to quickly, recover from not only a round up, but a round down, I think is, again, it's not fun to practice, but it's better to do it in a controlled situation and learn what works.
Yeah, even if you don't get all the way to a crash, but if you get to the state where you can sort of visualize what would happen, then you can visualize how to get out of it, which is really good.
Yeah.
I think we talked a lot about this. The evening sail choices, we got caught out. We've been caught out before where we just didn't. I think the sleep deprivation it kind of sneaks up on you, and you don't realize how tired you are and how you're not thinking straight, because it seems so obvious at shore that you would, like, before the sun goes down, you'd have, you do your check to make sure nothing's broken on the deck, and like do a little check-in, and then you'd think about what's the night gonna look like. But we were caught out like the last night, and I think we were just tired. It was a super windy year, so we ended up with our big kite up most of the night, and few crazy crashes. Once an hour.
So there's only 9 hours left, right? So just 9
Right?
crashes to go.
Yeah, it was like you could count how many crashes there's going to be because the sun will be up and then it'll get better. Yeah.
We have a bullet point on here about like a cheat sheet for expedition or the laptop. I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah.
I build out like an Excel sheet that has weather buoys for the course, has the surface charts already ready for the course so that I can just send out, sail mail, sail docs requests on this, and it's already like pre-planned. I also write out, sail doc requests for different locations down the course so if something goes wrong with expedition, I can still get those files because I just want to be like, I want to have it ingrained in my head how to get it. I want to have an Excel sheet that has it all backed up. And like the month before the race, I'm just practicing. Just like I have the Iridium Go sitting on my patio table outside, and I'm connected to it, and I'm practicing getting weather files on a really small modem.
That's awesome. We had got an Iridium Go for the first time, and for some reason here in the marina, it does not want to work. And I was wondering, do you think that's because of all the other electronics around, or?
No, the stock Iridium Go antenna, the little tiny antenna, sucks. It's
Okay,
absolutely
so it's
worthless. And an external antenna is like totally required.
Yeah.
So you can buy one that goes in your car for like car use.
Uh-huh.
You can use it at home, and it gets you 5 bars of service.
Okay.
And then on the boat, you should have 5 bars of service unless you have a carbon main. Carbon mains present a little bit of problems with most of the satellites to the south, and the carbon main blocks.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, we used it fine when we went out, so I think we're good. But and for some reason it works down the street, but doesn't work at our house.
Imagine it's like a southern facing view of your antenna. And I'm a big fan of sail mail. I love that. Like it's my way to get this stuff, and practicing it over and over again is super helpful.
Turns out that really good sail mail deal is just through August.
Oh, apparently there's a really good sail mail deal I don't have, but you got.
It's like $65 or $70 from now until the end of August.
Which instead of $250.
It's fine, yeah. If you're only going to use it for the race, it's perfect. It's a really great deal.
And there's also the ability, like with the Iridium Go, to set up one touch, like race check-ins. So you can program an email address and a phone number in to receive your lap on. So I have the ability to like open up the Iridium Go app on my phone, just hit like check in basically, and it would just ping the race committee, my wife, and Mark's wife our location, so we were live every day.
All right.
What was the name of the antenna that you cited, Ian?
Oh, sorry. There's like an antenna you can buy on Amazon for Iridium Go that you can use at home. It's like for your car. On your boat, you need an external antenna for the race, the rules requirements.
Yeah.
And that any external antenna will get you 5 bars.
Yeah.
Cool.
Man-overboard. Anybody want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think so this is unique to double-handed, since we're talking about double-handed specific stuff. The likelihood is that if someone goes overboard, it's going to happen when the other person is down below. So you've got a little bit of a different dynamic in terms of not only the mandatory safety devices, but also some of the other kind of optional devices, which we also used. So for example, the rules require you to be able to hit a man-overboard button on your GPS within, was it 8 seconds of a man-overboard event. So if the person's down below, is the best place for that to be up in the cockpit? It's worth thinking about, or is it somewhere kind of in the middle where it's accessible from a couple of different locations? Mm-hmm. That's important. I think Ian and I don't know, Melinda, about you and Bill, but we wore personal AIS transmitters.
Yeah.
The PLB feels good, but it's not, by the time that goes up to the satellite and gets to the person who's then starts to call around, it's really, more limited use in terms of finding you while you're still alive. DS, digital selective calling in the Gulf of the Farallones, I think that's really good. It's probably got its place out in the middle of the ocean too, but I think I kind of probably feel best about the personal AIS, and having the button clicked as quick as possible on the Man-overboard GPS marker. And then this is something, on surprise, for this pack up, we've done 2 separate days of Man-overboard drills. The first time we did, throwing something overboard and then going back and getting close to it. In the process of doing that, we realized that we had to actually get someone in the water and practice, getting the life sling to them and all that other stuff. And I would say that also translates to making sure that both the person in the water and the person on the boat know how to use the various Man-overboard tools. How are you going to navigate back to the person in the water using, whatever it is, GPS device it is? Can you do that while you're sailing the boat without an auto helm on? Since neither of us had auto helms in 2016. There's just all these details that it pays to think through a little bit. And again, I think practice is time well spent.
And how do you get that AIS screen up on your Triton display up in the cockpit, right? Like there's ability to do it, but if you're trying to do it for the first time in the Man-overboard situation, that's not the right time to be figuring that out, right?
Yeah.
You're going to hit these 3 buttons and it's going to go to that screen or whatever you're doing, or it's going to go to the mob location thing and practice it. I mean, I was on a boat 2 weeks ago and they said, oh, this is the mob button, and we pushed it, didn't do anything. The wires were cut down below.
Oh, wow.
Okay, small
Yeah.
problem. That button doesn't do anything. It's labeled mob. So test this gear, try this stuff out. Don't be afraid to hit the button. Don't be afraid to activate the AIS if you contact the Coast Guard ahead of time, and try this gear out at the dock so you're like familiar with how it works.
And we have on ours, we have some of the glow in the dark tape with a little arrow that says MOB right pointing at the button, just to make it that no matter what time of day, you can't forget where it is.
I love that tape, right? So I have the fluorescent glow fast tape, and then I have a black label maker, and I put it down and put black clear labels over it. And we label like the whole boat, because it's just fantastic to know what it is.
Those things work, that stuff works great.
Yeah.
I think that's the end. So here's 2 good pictures. Bill, this was originally in the sleep deprived pictures, but it got moved to the end. And you guys are talking to a ship in the background.
Yeah, so we came across a ship like going from Oahu to Oakland.
Yeah.
At like the halfway mark, and you don't see a lot out there, so you might as well fire up the radio and talk to the guy.
Definitely. Especially if it's at night.
It was during the day, and the guy was like, wait, there's a 100-foot boat out here? Where's that at? I'm like, well, he's 2 days in front of us, but best luck to him. So.
He wasn't nearly as impressed with us as we thought he should have been.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like, where are all the bigger, faster boats? When do I get to see those?
Oh, that's funny. So I think that's everything we have. I don't know if there's more questions. I can see that there's 36 chats, but I can't see any of them.
Yeah, no, that's great. People have been asking questions all along. If anybody has any final questions, they should pop them in the chat now. We started the evening with 22 participants, and we're now at 23 participants, so people stuck around.
Good.
Thanks for that.
Hey, just I saw Lori on there. She sent me some questions. One thing that we haven't covered tonight is her questions about battery. Let me just see here what her question was or is. Can't find it here.
And if anybody else has any questions now, feel free to, like I said, throw them in the chat.
So she had a question about what kind of power plan did you have, what wattage on the solar panels, and what types amps for batteries?
And Mark and I can't answer that question because we almost ran out of power, so I'm going to let
What?
answer
Well,
that.
No, but you had that good chart. It just turned out not to match reality, but that
The
was
chart was very accurate until like one panel didn't work. So
yeah.
Hey, Lori, I'd say this, Lori, because I know it's getting close to 8:30 here. I'll send you our power plan from 2016, and I'll copy Ian and Melinda, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on what was right about that power plan. And as Ian said, the power plan itself was great. It's just that if you do the math and take out one of the solar panels, then the whole equation changed. So it's probably a little bit more of an involved question. We did use lithium ion batteries. We had 2 of them that were 60 amps.
And so your backup battery was the same as so you just had
Yeah,
260?
that's correct. 260s.
I feel like we have like one little one that's like 15, 20, and then we have quite a big one that's like,
We've just gotten
20,
comfortable, I guess, with having like 120 amps, what we thought we needed, and how to figure out how to make that work for us.
yeah. And then we have a pretty big solar panel. Oh, there you go. We have a pretty big solar panel on the back that we can articulate up and down, and that worked really well for us on Wolfpack. And I think we have a backup soft one. So if we completely lost it, we can rig that one up. Because power is important if you want to keep knowing.
We talked about that with Bill, and he's like, that backup soft one he moves around the boat, you guys put up on the bow, because the stuff in the stern inevitably later in the day is just in the shade and doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, Melinda, exactly what, if I had to, if I was to do this again, I would do exactly what you guys are doing. Is I'd have a fixed mount one, and then I'd have a flexible backup that's also movable.
Yeah, and you can just plug it in, plumb it into the system.
Yep.
There was another request for the power plan document. I think there's an email in the chat that would also like that one. But there was another question about autopilots. I understand that none of you guys used autopilots, but do you have any sense of what sort of balance you would strike between autopilot and hand steering?
If we had an autopilot, it would really be just for like if we had a maneuver and we both needed to go up on deck, which we haven't had before.
Otherwise, you would entirely hand steer.
You would just steer. And I think well, on the size boat that we're going on, the autopilot would just suck up so much power. You can't use it you can't go solar if you're gonna do that. And we've done a generator before in a cooler, and then everybody has to put on earmuffs, and it runs for about 45 minutes every other day, and it's pretty horrible. So the solar was really nice compared to that. A little worrisome because you're like, oh, I hope it's gonna, we're gonna get enough charge, but way nicer.
I think if you're, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Sorry, the problem with an autopilot is most of the small boats are going to have tillers, and they're going to have tiller steered autopilots, and those autopilots suck. Like, they're not good at sailing the boat. So unless you're going to invest in like a below deck proper autopilot like you find on a big boat, and the batteries to back that system up, the autopilot is going to steer the boat at maybe 75% of its potential. It's constantly going to be off course. The kite's going to be over trimmed to have it up. It's not going to work well for you. And the key to doing well in a little boat, double-handed, is being able to sail that boat at 90 to 95% of its potential. You're never sailing at 100%, but the autopilot can't get you close. And so you'd be giving up a lot to use it.
100% agree.
And it might not even be able to, can't keep up with the boat if it's a little fast boat, where it's going to go, and you're just going to crash. I mean, they're probably better than they used to be, but
yeah. Mark, did you get any other questions by email that we haven't covered yet?
No, I just scanned through that. I got 2, unless anybody was sending them after. I got 2 emails during the course of the day. I think we've now covered everything.
Okay. There was one other question about brands or models of Iridium external antennas, but I think, Ian, you addressed that earlier when you just said that pretty much any external antenna that you find on Amazon for your Iridium Go is going to give you the signal strength you need.
Well, there's one for your house. Just get there's a magnetic car one on Amazon. It's like $40. Use that for your house. Do not use that on your boat. Talk to Peter King, talk to Eric Steinbrenner, talk to the guys that do this, and they'll get you like a Iridium antenna. But if you get a Iridium antenna that is a marine antenna, it's going to work fine for your offshore. any of those options will work. It's basically it's like
Okay.
whatever this big, it has a coil spring inside it that catches the waves. It's pretty cool. Don't let them talk you down on the coax size. I'm a big fan of running it's like RG8, the big cord, the 3/8 inch cord into the boat, into the go. Signal strength is your friend with satellite phones. Trying to save a quarter pound to run a lighter cord is probably not worth it.
All right. Well, there's a lot of people signing off and saying thanks. Fred says thanks a lot for doing this. Great learning. I've learned a lot. I think that you guys have really lived up to my personal expectations on all the all the little things that I never would have thought of, that I feel like I've heard tonight. So thanks a million for participating.
Happy to.
Thanks. Yeah, it was good. It was fun. All right. Well,
Thanks,
good night,
everybody.
Yeah. So this has all been recorded, and I'll figure out how to get this online and onto the website, so you can all refer back to it later and share amongst your friends.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night.